Welcome back to Deal or No Deal, our series on mastering the craft of learning. In our first video, we explored D for deliberate practice, that powerful structured approach to skill acquisition that also challenges the idea of innate talent. We also learned that true expertise comes from an intentional, focused effort, as opposed to endless repetition. But here's the thing. Deliberate practice is demanding. It requires you to step out of your comfort zone, and that can get hard. So how are you going to sustain the effort when the going gets tough? The answer lies in our second pillar, E for engagement. If you were to be honest with yourself, you would understand that there is a spectrum of involvement, and not all of it leads to progress. At one end, you can be off task. This is pretty self-explanatory. You're distracted, scrolling on your phone, daydreaming, or doing anything but the learning task. Clearly, no real learning is happening here. And then there is on task. This is where many of us spend our time. You're physically present, your book is open, you're writing, and you're doing the work. But are you truly learning? Often on task can look a lot like we've called naive practice in our first video. Mindless repetition without deep thought or specific goals. You might be highlighting every sentence or rereading notes without truly understanding them. You're putting in the time, but you're not getting a lot from it. And the sweet spot, the place where real learning and deliberate practice thrive, engaged. When you're engaged, you're not just present, you're deeply focused, actively processing information and making connections, and you're driven by a genuine curiosity or purpose. This is where your attention and motivation align to create powerful learning experiences. Why is it so hard to stay engaged sometimes? Well, it's all to do with our working memory, and our brains can only handle so much new information at once. This is well explained in John Sweller's cognitive load theory, a powerful concept in the science of learning. As your working memory has a limited capacity, once this is overloaded, it simply slows down or even crashes. Cognitive load theory identifies three main demands on your working memory. The first of these is the intrinsic load, that is, the inherent difficulty of the material itself. Understanding advanced harmonic concepts in music or a new grammatical structure in a foreign language will naturally have a higher intrinsic load. For novices, this intrinsic load can be very high because they lack the foundational knowledge that experts have already stored into their long-term memory. The second is extraneous load. This is unnecessary mental work that is caused by poorly designed instructions or distractions. Imagine trying to learn from a textbook where the diagrams are on different pages from the text, forcing your brain to constantly flip back and forth, or trying to study in a noisy environment. The extraneous load distracts you from the actual learning. And the third, this is the germane load. This is a good kind of mental effort. The processing that directly contributes to understanding and building strong, lasting knowledge in your long-term memory. This includes activities like making connections, self-explaining concepts, or actively retrieving information. The key insight for engagement is this. If your brain is overwhelmed with too high an intrinsic load or too high an extraneous load, then there is simply no mental bandwidth left for that germane load, that deep processing that leads to real learning. Deliberate practice by its nature is not inherently motivating. It requires significant discipline and effort, pushing you beyond what is comfortable. So how do we bridge that gap? Well, that's where the link between engagement and motivation comes to play. Motivation is the initial spark, the reason that you start a task. It can be extrinsic, like wanting a good grade or a reward, or intrinsic, like genuine curiosity or the joy of learning. Engagement is a sustained energy and focus that keeps you going. When you're truly engaged, the learning process itself becomes rewarding, creating a positive feedback loop. It can also come from internal factors, such as recognizing what your potential is. That is, being able to understand that there is a future version of yourself who can do what it is that you're learning to do. Seeing tangible progress from your deliberate practice acts as a powerful intrinsic motivator, reinforcing your commitment to continue. This means that while extrinsic goals might get you started, fostering genuine engagement is key to sustaining the demanding work of deliberate practice. The first step is to break it down. Just like we discussed in the first video, deliberate practice is about tackling skills in manageable chunks. This directly reduces intrinsic cognitive load, especially when you're a novice. If a task feels overwhelming, break it into smaller, simpler steps. When working with a coach, a mentor, or a teacher, they might actually scaffold this process to a I do, we do, you do process. This helps to break it down, particularly when you're a novice, to understand the different components of what you need to do. This ensures the challenge is appropriate, reducing cognitive load and maintaining engagement. The additional bonus of this is that it is an effective way to create those mental representations, your ability to visualize the steps in the learning ahead. Next, minimize distractions. This seems obvious, but find a quiet place, turn off your notifications, and close all those extra tabs in your browser. Reducing extraneous load frees up your working memory for the actual learning. And now is a good time to pause and just consider, what do those distractions look like for you? Is it a pile of books beside the bed that are waiting to be read? Anything like that can actually add to that extraneous load that you will see visually and affect your working memory. Cal Newport, a researcher who applies deliberate practice to knowledge work, emphasizes the need for zero distractions when tackling complex material, as it's too difficult to internalize with divided attention. Our third tactic is to embrace deliberate play. Deliberate practice can be hard work, but it doesn't always have to be a grind. The concept of deliberate play combines the structured benefits of deliberate practice with intrinsic motivation and enjoyment. As Adam Grant puts it, deliberate play is a combination of practice and play, where you take the skill you're trying to build, break it down into the core elements, and make those elements fun. This approach reduces anxiety and fear of failure, which are significant barriers to learning. This then leads to a more authentic learning experience. For instance, instead of rote memorization, you could use a Jeopardy-style game to practice digital skills, or engage in role-playing scenarios to practice language structures. By making the mistakes low stakes and part of the fun, deliberate play fosters both cognitive and emotional engagement, making challenging practice more palatable and sustainable. Engagement isn't just about feeling good while you learn, it's about optimizing your brain for that deep, meaningful skill acquisition. By understanding the difference between merely being on task and truly being engaged, as well as managing your cognitive load through the process, you will truly transform your learning experience. When you're engaged, your deliberate practice becomes more effective, more efficient, and ultimately more sustainable. You're not just putting in the hours, you're making every hour count. In our next video, we're going to explore A for autonomy, how decision-making empowers you to develop your skills and take ownership of your learning journey even further. See you there.